Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has arrived in Kyiv, where he's scheduled to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Prime Minister Yulia Svyrydenko. We now cross live to our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Chatterjee. Oz, good morning. So what can we expect from this meeting? What details can you tell us, Oz?
Well, just earlier in Mikhailovska Square, President Zelenskyy and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk were laying wreaths at the memorial wall for soldiers that have fallen in the war to date. President Zelenskyy is expected to hold a further meeting with Prime Minister Tusk and with the Ukrainian Prime Minister also, where they will continue negotiations and discussions. Particularly, this is happening as those discussions are ongoing in the UAE, those trilateral talks between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. Now, we are expecting there to be a press conference later held between the Ukrainian president and the Polish prime minister. So we will be there to report on that. But for now, talks are ongoing. The first step of that meeting has taken place already. And now they will be having further discussions before a press conference later on in the afternoon.
Thank you so much, Oz Chatterjee. We will be coming back to you later on. The New START treaty between the United States and Russia, which limited the size of the two countries' nuclear arsenals, expired late on Wednesday. Moscow and Washington control more than 80% of the world's nuclear warheads and are now unbound by any limits regarding their arsenal's further development. Now, the New START treaty is signed in 2010 by former Presidents Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev, limited each side's nuclear stockpile to 1,550 deployed strategic warheads, a reduction of nearly 30% from the previous limit set in 2002. Joe Biden agreed to extend the treaty for another 5 years in 2021, but the U.S.-Russia relationship has since soured following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. The expiration of the New START treaty marks the first time since the early 1970s that there are no legally binding limits on the strategic forces of the world's two largest nuclear powers, with a replacement agreement being under negotiation. A Polish Defense Ministry staffer suspected of collaborating with foreign intelligence services will be held in pretrial detention for 3 months. The coordinator of Poland's security services, Minister Tomasz Siemoniak, made the announcement on X.
The court has decided to impose 3 months of pre-trial detention on an employee of the Ministry of Defence suspected of collaborating with foreign intelligence services. He was detained on February 3rd at the request of the prosecutor's office, following an investigation and findings by the military counterintelligence service.
Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski says the United States has proposed a major international initiative on critical minerals, an idea that's already gaining support across the European Union, including in Poland. The plan aims to reduce dependence on single suppliers and prevent the use of critical resources as political leverage.
The US has proposed an international initiative, and Poland and the rest of the EU member states agree with its aims. The initiative believes that critical minerals should never be the subject of blackmail and pushes for a more geographically diversified production of such resources. This is a crucial component of our economic safety, our security and supply chains. This is a new initiative, but things are already moving swiftly. You can expect intense negotiations with the EU and its member states within the coming weeks.
Revenues from Russia's state oil and gas companies in January were half of those recorded in the same month last year, according to figures from the Kremlin's finance ministry. Now, the fall followed a drop in crude prices and a stronger ruble. The January figure of $5.1 billion was down from $5.8 billion in December. Oil and gas revenues are vital for Russia's state budget. They provide the Kremlin's main source of cash, making up nearly a quarter of federal budget proceeds that have been drained by heavy defense spending since Russia launched its war in Ukraine. We need to use our resources smartly and believe in victory in case of a conflict with Russia, said Lieutenant General Piotr Blażeusz, the strategic advisor to the chief of the Polish General Staff. General Blażeusz was Aaron Damon's guest on TVP World's On the Record.
I think we should first ask the question, is the Europe willing to defend itself, and whether our political masters have the belief in victory. As a military, I have both. Then it's obviously always a political mindset, political decision. So I think we are able to do it together, and Ukraine is the best example. Think about when Russia started this unprovoked war, the full-scale war. I think some of them have some doubt, but I believe that they are not taking into account the example of Ukraine, that if there is a will, as I said, and this belief in victory, we can do it together, because we have the proper resources, we have the capabilities that we can use together. It's just that we need to use them smartly.
U.S. President Donald Trump held a virtual meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of a planned April trip to China. The two leaders discussed a wide range of trade and security issues and reaffirmed the need to maintain a close bilateral relationship, even as Beijing warned the U.S. against selling weapons to Taiwan.
I have just completed an excellent telephone conversation with President Xi of China. It was a long and thorough call where many important subjects were discussed, including trade, military, the April trip that I will be making to China, which I very much look forward to, Taiwan, the war between Russia, Ukraine, the current situation with Iran, the purchase of oil and gas by China from the United States, the consideration by China of the purchase of additional agricultural products, airplane engine deliveries, and numerous other subjects, all very positive. The relationship with China and my personal relationship with President Xi is an extremely good one, and we both realise how important it is to keep it that way.
A Russian comedian has been sentenced to nearly 6 years in prison for telling a joke about a war veteran, the latest conviction in a widening crackdown on citizens accused of speaking rudely and mockingly about Russia's military activities. Artemy Ostanin, a stand-up comedian, was convicted of inciting hatred after he made a joke last year about a veteran of Russia's war in Ukraine. The remarks sparked outrage among military bloggers and nationalists alike, resulting in a nearly 6-year jail sentence and a fine of around 3,300 euros. Now, the ruling comes amid a broader crackdown on dissent following the introduction of strict censorship laws after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. After learning he would face trial, Ostanin fled the country but was detained in neighboring Belarus. He claims Belarusian law enforcement officers beat and electrocuted him during his arrest, leaving him with a spinal fracture. Ostanin appeared in a Moscow court on Wednesday morning to hear the verdict. The opening ceremony of the 2026 Winter Olympics is slated for this Friday. However, not all facilities have been completed yet, and construction delays aren't the only challenge facing the Games organizers. According to Andrea Varnier, head of the organizing committee, preparations for the event have cost significantly more than initially expected.
With only 4 days remaining until the start of the 2026 Milano Cortina Winter Olympic Games, Italian organizers are racing against the clock to complete the Cortina Sliding Centre. Along with the new €250 million Santa Giulia Ice Hockey Stadium in Milan, both not part of the original bid, these venues have contributed to the organisation cost of the Games ballooning over the initial budget.
The financial situation of our organising committee has been extremely difficult throughout these years, and more work will still be required after the Games to finally place it in a secure and sustainable footing. We must honestly acknowledge that these Games have cost more than was originally foreseen in the candidature budget.
According to latest estimates, the Games are set to cost €5.2 billion overall, comprising €3.5 billion of public money for infrastructure and €1.7 billion in private funds to organise the event. But Italian officials hope these massive outlays will provide a boost to economic growth, which in recent years failed to rise above 0.7%. Past experience offers mixed results. France, which hosted the Summer Olympic Games, saw only a marginal increase in economic growth of 0.07 percentage points. The Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, held during the COVID pandemic, also delivered limited short-term gains, with higher benefits expected over the long term. With around 2 million visitors expected in northern Italy, the event is expected to deliver lasting benefits to the local economy through increased tourism and improved transport links.
Now, if confirmed, this could be a level of interference not seen in space before. 2 Russian spacecraft are believed to be responsible for intercepting European satellites, potentially risking compromising sensitive information and allowing the Kremlin to manipulate orbital trajectories. Sonia Gatabishchan has this report.
European officials believe that their communications have been targeted by Moscow, says the Financial Times. The data backs the suspicion, as Russian spacecrafts like the Luch 2 have been getting dangerously close to European satellites like Intelsat 39 the past few years.
These satellites come close to telecommunication satellites, and when we say close, it's a few dozen of kilometers typically, and they stay there for a few days, sometimes a few weeks, and then leave and go to the next target.
Analysts have noted increased tracking activity since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. In particular, since its launch in 2023, Luch 2, a Russian military geosatellite, has reportedly come close to 17 European satellites, their mere proximity sounding alarm bells.
Geostationary Earth orbit satellites usually have a given slot defined by the longitude, and they're not supposed to move from these slots. So yeah, like 10 kilometers in geo is very close. It's unusual, and it can be considered as a threat for satellite operators.
European satellites tracked by Russia serve mainly civilian uses, such as beaming satellite television into homes, but also contain sensitive government and military communications. Experts note the risk of Moscow spacecraft possibly deducing how European satellites work and using that information against them.
The effect could be a loss of communication in the, I would say, best case, and in the worst case, it could be misleading maneuvers for the European satellite, and it could lead to dramatic event on orbit, like a collision.
Last week, European Commissioner Andrius Kubilius acknowledged that member states fear that war is coming. Consequently, he requested that Europe's new secure connectivity constellation, IRIS² rolls out quicker than expected to strengthen the region as soon as possible.
This is very much what IRIS² is meant to do, is increase the resilience of the SATCOM infrastructure, ensure that there are secure communication links and secure communication systems that can be used and that can provide again, communications that cannot be or are way harder to be interfered with.
IRIS² is considered a response to Elon Musk's Starlink, providing secure and encrypted communication services. The EU's multi-orbital constellation of 290 satellites was supposed to launch in 2030, but in the current geopolitical context, Kubilius now eyes 2029. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
And that's all for this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and stay with us for more news and exclusive interviews.